my name is Tyree Marshall and I'm an artistic associate at Skylight Theater Company. Welcome to Skylight Live and welcome to our final Beyond Conversations for Lavender Men. I know, but we're closing. We gotta close, y'all. So if you haven't seen it, head to our website, get some tickets if they're still there because we are selling out. But if you can't make it to the theater, check out our website as well because we also have a digital option available to watch it VOD. So please watch the show. We'd love to hear what you think. I just want to thank all the folks that have been able to watch it, that have been able to come out to the theater. We really appreciate your support. We are beaming here at Skylight, and I just want to let y'all know that. I am so excited to talk about our Beyond Conversations tonight. It's called Thick, Black, and Ready to Love. And boy, is this going to be such a good conversation because everybody deserves to be loved. I mean, everybody, regardless of the institutions, regardless of the systems of oppression in this country that make us feel like we're not deserving. I want to look you in the face right now. All the people watching, all the people that might be watching later on YouTube, you're deserving of love. You are deserving of love. I'm so excited to introduce you to our moderator this evening. Not only are they an Afro-Jewish writer and activist, they are also a co-host of the Black Fat Femme podcast on iHeart. I am so happy to introduce y'all to Jordan Daniels. Take it away.
Thank y'all so much, Tyree. Thank you. This is so exciting. I'm so thrilled and pumped to be here. Hello again, y'all. My name is Jordan Daniels. My pronouns are he, him, his. I identify as fat, Black, queer, and Jewish, and I am so thrilled to be here alongside my two good Judies, Dr. John Paul, Tariq Carroll. Big shout out to Skylight Theater for hosting us this evening, Level Holder and Roger Q. Mason for making the connection for us to collaborate. I want to briefly introduce our panelists, Dr. John Paul and Tariq Carroll, and then let them share more about themselves. I will also have them guide them with an intro question. First is Dr. John Paul, because they are my co-hosts on the Black Fat Femme podcast, and they are really the ideator and driver behind it. They are someone that I have had the pleasure to know for damn near 7 years now, which is a wild to think about. I was a baby, and now I don't get to call them just mentor, inspiration, but I get to call them friend and family, and so I'm so thankful that they're here with us. Tariq Carroll is a friend that I've known also for damn near 7 years too, through the photography and fat liberation space, and get to watch them grow their work and to see them really like show and highlight and uplift bodies of all sizes in all colors and shapes and shades is just so special. So I'm so thankful that they are here with us. I'm going to pass it to John first to introduce himself a bit more. I'm going to give them each the guiding question of, tell us about your relationship to the word self-love.
Wow, well, first off, thank you so much for that awesome introduction. I am just as much as you might be honored to be in my presence. I'm always honored to share any space with you. Same with you, Tariq. I'm really happy to say that they both, all of us were together on the mic a couple of weeks ago for one of our episodes. So for folks who are watching, if you want to go back and you want to hear us kiki and really get into kind of, creating this new bond, we have that episode. But ultimately, this notion of who I am and how that kind of feeds into self-love. I am a writer. I like to think of myself as an educator. I teach at University of Redlands. I have really been spending a lot of time in my own head writing about my lived experience as a Black Fat Femme as I'm working on my book. And so this concept of self-love it's very interesting because I'm writing another story while I'm writing my book, and the conversation around self-love keeps coming up. I keep thinking about self-love as this idea, as we talk a lot about this notion of loving our Blackness, loving our queerness, loving our bodies, et cetera, but rarely are we given space to talk about the intersections of all three of those things. And so really thinking about self-love from the prospect or from the perspective of really giving ourselves the agency to kind of show up without feeling like we have to. It's so interesting because in my prologue, I talk about the mask, this notion of how Black fat femmes constantly have to wear a mask, right? So we have to code switch, or we have to dress a certain way, or we have to talk a certain way in order for us to be able to be taken seriously or to be respected. And really thinking about self-love, for me, it's this notion of I'm in a place now where you are going to see me in all of my Blackness, my queerness, my fatness, my feminist, and I'm not going to censor myself. I'm not going to wear that mask. So I think self-love for me is just, it's, you know, it's so cliche to say, oh, I'm just accepting who I am, but it's not even accepting who I am. It's really sitting with who I am and being proud of that person that I've built and that I've become and that I've continued to protect and work on. So that's just kind of my thought. But yeah, I'm really excited to hear everyone else's thoughts around the same concept. Yeah, Tyree.
Thank you so much, Tariq. Let's pass it to you.
Yes. Hi, everybody. I am Tariq Carroll. I'm a body. Let me say, I am a fat liberation activist. My work, my photography centers highlighting fat and marginalized bodies. I'm really a multi-hyphenate creative. I do a bunch of things, but like my core of what I do is really highlighting bodies that we don't typically see in media as much as we should. I started a body positivity campaign called the Everyman Project back in 2017, and I'm beyond grateful to have the platform that I have right now, where I'm able to make change. I've been able to have seminars at Hearst magazines and talk to editors at 17 about the importance of real inclusion, and being on the ground floor of the discussion, especially back in 2017, there weren't as many men in the space speaking about body diversity and inclusion. So it's definitely been like a really interesting journey over the past 5 years to see how things have shaped and shifted and changed. And there's more new issues that we really need to talk about now.
Thank you both so much. I'm feeling everything you're saying is so amazing to hear both of you talk about the work that you do and why it's so fulfilling and how you're changing the world in the process. I want to first, Tariq, you made a great point of saying you identify as a fat liberation activist, because that's the first thing I want to get into. Is that I know when this program was first shared, it was under this lens of body positivity, and that's something for myself I for sure feel that I have moved past. Like my body positivity, like girl, I done left her in the dirt in the road like 2 years ago. I'm trying to get to a place of liberation. And so I want to like dive more into the language of how do you use that? Because I feel like we're in a place now where certain people use liberation, but people in the mainstream are still using body positivity. And when we're looking at this through a lens of being Black and fat and queer and femme as well, like how do you navigate the language of body liberation over body positivity? And Tariq, let's start with you.
So for me, I've come to a space where I believe that both can be important. Because I feel that body positivity is for the inner work. The inner work on the self to learn how to love yourself, to learn how to push against the adversity that we've been put under as Black femmes. You know what I mean? With fat liberation, that's where we can affect change within the world. You can't necessarily take body positivity to the government and try to advocate for changing the BMI system because it was originally created by a white mathematician who only surveyed white bodies. You know what I mean? You can't take body positivity to the government and advocate for that. But with fat liberation, you can. That's where you can more so make change with, you know, some of the work that I've been doing, talking to fashion brands about the importance of inclusive sizing. Speaking about how doctors treat fat patients and fat bodies, you know, how we're, you know, marginalized, the fat phobia that you deal with going to a doctor in general, you know. So the fat liberation, that's where we can really kind of activate and really make that change with body positivity. I feel that's more so for the inner work, the inner healing, in my opinion, but also too, I'm a little bit torn because the word has become so corporatized and commodified, especially in the space of fashion. So where I've rested on it at this point, I believe that both are important, but I think one can make more change in the world than the other is where I've, you know, made peace with.
I've made peace with. I love that. And I appreciate you. I really love that you that you framed it in this sense of body positive is the inner work, because
Mhm.
as I was like, oh, I left that girl back somewhere, and you're like, no, she's still here. She's in here, versus liberation is gonna be the
Mhm.
outside work. Like, love that frame. And also, like, drag me on that, because I was gonna leave her
No.
behind. But no, for real, I'm like, let me, you know what, Bopo girl, I'm sorry. Let me bring you back real quick. Let me just take you back with me on the
But you
journey.
know
So,
what though? I feel that way about the commercialized
mm,
aspect of body positivity and what it's become. That
mm,
let's throw that away because we have some real issues to confront. But they're both important. They're both important. And I think there's a difference between real body positivity and performative body positivity. You know what I mean?
mm,
A lot of people, they want to get the clicks, they want to get the engagement. You know what I mean? So it's
mm.
you know, it's really really keying into the people that are creating quality content, and able to go through the muck of everything that's online and really like following those activists that are like truly doing the work, that are doing the work that they say they're doing, they're practicing what they're preaching. There's a lot of performative crap going on in the body positivity space, so especially with fashion brands that try to you know, take those steps into the space of inclusion, but their idea of inclusion is one racially ambiguous model who's a 2X that checks multiple boxes, So, and they call that body positivity. So, but yeah, I'm going to stop on that.
Thank you, Tyree. Thank you, John. I saw some faces. I saw some. So I'm curious to ask you your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think for me, where I'm singing, we talked about this a couple of weeks, a few weeks ago. The whole, for me, when you said that, the immediate thing that came to mind was Old Navy, and them talking about we're size inclusive, we're expanding our sizes, but yet it's still very hard to find anything in their store, right? And so I think about this ultimate idea when you ask the question, what is the relationship to the language? What is the relationship to the ways that the world treats both ideas? And I love this. I love what you say, right? Like, body positivity is not something you can just take to someone and say, hey, you need to do work. Liberation is actually doing the work around it. I know for me, I think that the thing that I'm starting to notice with a lot of companies and brands, and again, for people who are watching this that work with these major companies and brands, I want to make sure that I make it very clear that I'm not coming for them. But what I think is so important to understand is that, what is, our Bible says, faith without works is dead, right? So we need people
Amen.
to do something, right? And that's the thing that I think for me, when we start talking about body positivity versus body liberation, right? When a company steps up and says, we have laid out this plan to make sure that marginalized bodies, right, however they identify, whether they identify as fat, whether it's disabled, whatever the case may be, these are the steps that what we're laying out to be inclusive. That for me is when I'm like, yes, that's what the liberation piece is, right? We want to be able to see ourselves in a company. But when you post a fat person on a poster and you say, oh, we're offering a couple of extra sizes, that doesn't tell me anything about your company's culture. It doesn't tell me anything about your company's ideology. That doesn't tell me about how fat people are treated in your company, right? So I think for me, the biggest thing is when I think about these notion, I always kind of go back to what Crystal says, right? Words mean things. And I think that there are a lot of people who just throw words around because they think that it's the right thing to say. But in reality, what's happening is a lot of individuals are using these words as a way for them to not be held accountable. So body positivity is cute. I respect it. I appreciate that folks are wanting to celebrate the bigger bodies, but I also need to know what you are doing to make sure that my bigger Black queer body is respected, regarded, and protected in whatever space that I'm in. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Thank you, both of you, out here dismantling the socio-capitalistic mechanisms of how people are wielding BOPO against us and not for us and not with us. Thank you so much for that. I want to transition a little bit into more like a bit more of like a social characteristic and aspect, particularly both through the lens of being a queer person, or or like John, like I know you identify as trans femme, like in the queer and trans community, and also like layer it with the greater community, like including the straights or heteronormative folks, as we can say, to be generous. I am like I'm curious to ask more about experiences of fat phobia through the lens of being a BFF. You know, the title of this is Thicc. That's that thick, Black and ready to love. And what I'm thinking about is, I know that the context of this program was in the context of the show that is nearing the end of its run, Lavender Man, which focuses on LGBTQ plus inclusion in the world. And so I really want us to hone in on what inclusion looks like, and how we experience it. And I also want to push it further into a lens of, I always see it as not just inclusion, but belonging, and how to create belonging. So before we get into creating belonging, I want to ask for us to share more about our experiences as Black and fat folks in the queer and trans community, and how that affects our relationships with people in terms of friendships, but also in terms of love. John, I know you're married, so please share a little bit about that as well. And then if there's space for each of you to talk a little bit about how maybe affects you in like your workplace, or how it affects you around heteronormative folks. And John, I'll toss it to you first this time.
Yeah. So, I mean, we could be here for literally 3 hours just talking about this notion. Yeah, when you say the word thick, I mean, and that's the thing I've been very attentive to, is when people throw that word around. It's the thick is I always like to tell people, you can say fat, right? Like, it is okay for you to, kind of the same way I tell people, you can say Black, right? Like, you don't, I feel like a lot of folks throw thick around as a way to still kind of like slate fat people, right? This notion of I'm thick versus I'm fat, because there's such a negative connotation about being fat. And I think what was so interesting, so even just, I get this question a lot when I'm in conversation with people about Black Fat Femme, right? Why did I intentionally put the fat in the title of my show, or in the title of our show, Jordan? Like, for me, it became this notion of reclaiming the word fat as kind of the same way we've reclaimed the word queer, the way we've reclaimed the word Black, or we've reclaimed the N-word, all of these different things, right? Like, I'm really big on words, lexicons, things of that nature, because they tell a story. And I think that's been the biggest thing for me, is my life, my life ain't been no crystal stairs. It really hasn't, right? I've always been fat. I've always been Black. I've always been feminine. And even when I lost the weight, this is what I tell people. When I was in college, I was 200 pounds. I was 200 pounds, 5'10". I could wear stuff at Abercrombie at the time. And even though I was thin, I was still fat in my mind, because I still was not skinny enough, right? And so there was a lot of conversations about body dysmorphia and all the different things that were happening there. And so I always like to tell people that I think a bigger thing about this notion of, when we start talking about, Blackness and fatness and what these words mean, right? My mind will always go back to me always being a fat person, because I've had to learn how to navigate the world as a bigger person. And now I've gotten to this place too, where I'm not beating. So it used to be this constant pressure to be thin, this constant pressure to feel like I had to look a certain way. And it's not to say that I don't take care of my health. Y'all know me, y'all follow me. I Peloton every day. But the bigger thing for me is, I'm not caught up in this notion that I have to, in order for me to be beautiful, in order for me to be respected, in order for me to be held at a higher standard in media, that I have to be thin. That's not the case anymore for me, right? And it's not that I can't lose weight. I know how to lose weight. I've done it twice. The reality for me now is, I am in a place where I love my body at the size that it is. And it is now someone else's responsibility and problem if they don't, right? It's no longer about me. And I think that's the thing. I've stopped internalizing the hatred that people have for me as a Black person. I've stopped internalizing the hatred that the world has for me as a fat person or as a femme person. If you don't like me, that's you. Like, that has nothing to do with me. And I think that's the thing that's so liberating about everything I'm doing in my world, whether it be from my podcast to writing the book to teaching to all the stuff that I've been doing. I'm really at this place where I'm no longer internalizing the world hatred for me, right? As my problem. It now has become, well, I'm sorry, y'all better make room because I'm still gonna come through, and I might hit you in the process. So to say all of that, right? I think that's really, before I give the mic over, I really think that's the thing. I think really getting to this place and understanding that a lot of the stuff, I always like to say, it'd be so interesting how many businesses would go out of business if people just love themselves. And I think about that often. I think about, what am I buying into? What am I feeding into? And what am I trying to unlearn and disassociate from? And I think that's the wave I'm on right now, that I have now disconnected from this idea that fatness is a bad thing, right? Because like I said, my health is fine. Like, I can keep up with the best of them. And so I think that that's something I'm constantly thinking about.
Thank you so much, Sean. Tariq, please.
Okay, so back to your question about, my experiences in the queer community. Coming out back in 2008, that was rough. You know what I mean? There was no, the word body positivity wasn't known. It really took me a long time to really learn how to love myself, B, find my tribe, and then learning how to like fully embrace my most authentic self, embracing my fatness and embracing my feminist. And for me, from 21 to 34, it's been consistent layers of shedding. And now I can, turning back to what John said, now I'm in a space where I don't give a good goddamn. I don't know if we could curse here. I don't know if we can. But I don't care what people think about me, essentially.
Insert expletive there, just period.
Oh, I can.
We sure can. Say it, bitch.
So
say
I don't
it.
give a
Yes,
I don't give a fuck.
Yes.
What people think about me at this point in my life, because that's their problem. If you don't like what you see, that's your problem. That's your internalized fat phobia. That's on you, because I had to unlearn and reprogram all of the toxic shit that has been programmed into me from the beginning, So from 2008 till now, again, like a lot of shedding, a lot of unlearning, traits that really was toxic to me. And then honestly, in finding my tribe, finding people who, were like me, or also people who would challenge my thoughts, people who would poke holes in limited ideas that I had of myself, friends that challenged me to like, hey, really step into like, yo, you want to wear the nails? Wear the nails. You want to wear the makeup? Let's do it. It's having those people around you that encourage you to do that, to be your most authentic self. And it wasn't until I found my tribe, was in finding my safe space, that was where I started to like pull back the layers and like wanting to try more things in a way that felt fearless. And it was the most freeing thing. And it was beyond the clothes, but like the fashion is a key part of expression. It's an extension of my identity. But, not just the fashion, not just the, the surface shit, but also doing the internal work and challenging those ideas of myself. And it was a lot of unlearning that I had to do, and really taking the time to find the right tribe, because I had those toxic friends. You know what I mean? And a lot of times too, like a lot of times I didn't really feel like I fit in anywhere in the queer community for the longest time. For the longest time. I would go out, New York back in 08, there was clubs and things, but a lot of them were like predominantly white, unless you went uptown to Harlem, But yeah, it's taken me a while to really find my tribe. But I think in finding my tribe, I've been able to really fully embrace all of who I am, essentially.
I love that so much. Finding your tribe has helped you embrace all of who you are. That's so special because that's how something that I have felt too in my tribe of people. And that includes the two of you, like feeling like I am my highest self and my best self and my most like self-love self when I'm around the two of you or folks just like you or folks like us. And that is really, really special. I'm holding the point you made about fashion, Tariq. I'm gonna ask that a bit later, so I'm gonna hold that real quick in my mind because I want to dive into fashion about and how we brought self-love into ourselves from that lens. But I want to get into, as I said earlier, the idea of belonging versus inclusion, right? Because you have inclusion, and I'm going to quote Dr. John A. Powell. He is the director of the Othering and Belonging Institute. Up in Berkeley, California, at Cal or UC Berkeley, and a few years ago, I saw him in a conference, and he had talked about the work of inclusion. At one point, he said, inclusion is actually not what we should be looking towards or striving toward. We should be striving for belonging, because inclusion is saying, come to my table, you're welcome at my table, but still my table. Like, you can come and sit with me, you can eat my food, but it's my food and my table. But belonging is saying, we're co-creating a space where this is our table together, we're making the food together. And so I really jam with that. I've taken that, I ran with that everywhere I can go with it. And so when I think of the idea of inclusion in, in queer and trans spaces as fat people, and like particularly through the lens of self-love, like y'all shared with us what it was like to experience ostracism and discrimination. But I'd love for us to dive into, like, for the people who are watching, listening, the tools in which they can use themselves to help create spaces of belonging for people around them. Like one thing I'm thinking of is, but both of you made this point of when someone is saying something about fat people, it's about them, and it's about them and not really you as the fat person. So like one thing I offer folks listening to this is really do interrogate your fat phobia that you have in yourself. Like, where is that coming from? Because I can tell you mine's coming from all the diet plans that my parents put me on when I was a kid: the Optifast, the Slim Fast, the Jenny Craig, the Weight Watchers, the something fast, something like every day was a fast of something, 2 shakes a day, 3 shakes a day, no calories. Like, that's I know where that comes from in me. So I encourage y'all as viewers and listeners to think about where that comes inside you. But John and Tariq, I would love to hear what other tools you think people can have to that they can create spaces of belonging with other fat folks, or if they're fat themselves watching this, how can they how can they say, hey friends, hey non-fat friends, I want to create a space of belonging with you for myself. Tariq, let's go with you.
So I would say some things we can do to create belonging. For one, reaching out. 2, being genuine. 3, leading with kindness, leading with openness, and communicating that. And I think also too is like checking the people around you, you know what I mean, and challenging their own, fat phobia. Like, you have those friends that they make their little comments and they say their little shit here and there, and I don't know if I'm jumping too ahead right now, but I feel that especially when it comes to like in dating spaces, I feel that we should really challenge each other's thoughts on certain things, because one thing that really sticks out to me is the word preference. And for me, the word preference, it's a umbrella term. It's a cop out term to hide behind internalized fat phobia and racism, because you have a lot of gays, a lot of queers, that love to say, oh, I'm not into fat men, but that's just my preference. Or I'm not into Asian men, that's just my preference. And like, you saying that's just your preference does not absorb you of being racist or fat phobic. That's not, I don't care about preference. It's like, you can never have that much of a preference to sit there and say that about one whole group. Like, it's just straight up fucked up, And I think a lot of people hide behind that term, and they think it's okay. And I've had friends who have said shit like that, and I check them, and that's me doing my part in the community to make sure that the people around me are being checked on their shit. And I think it's also up to us to check people around us if we hear anything like that. Now, gratefully I've created a circle of friends who don't think like that, who don't act like that. But like, if I'm ever in a space where I hear someone saying some shit and I feel comfortable enough to tell them, like, that's kind of problematic. Actually, that's really a harmful way to even think or even say that. Let me push back and let me challenge your way of thinking right now. And they can either agree with me or not. But I think accountability is a way that we create belonging. It's holding each other accountable to challenge those toxic thoughts that we've all been programmed to think. And I think that's a huge part of something that I feel that we all need to do. I think we all do it, but I would hope more of us would do it.
Thank you. Yes. Hell yes. I mean, as someone who's thought about belonging for years, the different pathways of it, I've never looked at the lens of accountability also increases belonging, that checking yourself and your friends creates belonging because it creates trust and vulnerability and it creates an opportunity for you all to build and grow together. And that is so true. And thank you for going off about preference. I saw Tyree had put to us as well, go off about preference, because I too cannot stand when someone says, oh, it's my preference. And I am always thinking about, okay, but what informs your preference? Like, where does that preference come from? Like you can't girl, like I prefer potatoes to I prefer like French fries to onion rings, but I'll eat both of them still. John said, no. I mean, no, listen.
Yeah, I'm not a potato. Like, that's literally it. Like, I don't want to cut you off, but like that whole conversation around what preference is, like, again, I'm not a fruit. I'm not a vegetable.
No.
I'm not, cat or dog. I'm not an animal. Like, no, you cannot have a preference around me. I'm sorry. It's just not possible.
Yeah. To me, when someone says that to me, it's even like, well, my response is like, well, I prefer America before it's colonized, but like here we are. So what are we gonna do, baby? I just want to know.
Look, here we are.
But Tariq, thank you so much. John, I want to ask if you have thoughts on that too, but I also want to particularly ask you this a bit more specific question because you are married, you're in a relationship, and so I want to ask, like, how do you have this conversation with your partner?
The specific question about belonging per se with my partner.
Yes, and in the spaces that you create together, and talk about maybe like how maybe like you both see differently through cultural contexts.
Yeah, well, and so I mean, it's no secret. If you peruse my social media and you peruse my work, my partner is white, and so I get a lot of that. I've had a lot of people ask me, how can you be so pro-Black when you're married to a white person? And I always like to tell people that being a part of being married to a white person is making sure that my white partner goes up for me more than I do. And that he does. There have been moments, and I shared this in particular experience once, we were in a Hollister and a woman had insinuated that I had stolen something. And before I even had a chance to go off, my husband stepped in front of me and he said, babe, I got it. And he went off. And so same thing with his family. He's real quick to check his family on their racism. He's really quick to check his family when different isms pop up, or even in moments when he knows I'm not comfortable. He's real quick to say, you know what? I know my cousin so-and-so is going to be there. They are hella racist. I don't want to put you in that situation, so stay home. And it's good that I think I've gotten to a place, we've been married for almost 12 years. I've gotten to a place with my partner where I don't have to be the educator. Maybe the first 2 years when we were together, it felt like I was constantly having to educate him about what my belonging and what my needs were as a Black person. But now he puts those needs before me. And so I like to say we are still growing and we are still learning with each other. But I think for me, it doesn't feel like I'm having to teach him every day. He understands intersectionality. He understands, race conversations. He gets why Black Lives Matter is so important. He gets it. And that's what I tell people. My husband truly gets it. And so people can feel however they want to feel about me being married to a white person until they pay a bill. It doesn't matter. But what I will say is that I think one of the things that I think is really important for me to highlight is specifically when we talk about being in relationships with people. I have been in spaces with Black people who didn't make me feel like I belong. I have been in spaces with brown people who made me feel like I didn't belong, right? Belonging has nothing to do with, I think, our identities. I think belonging really has to do a lot with autonomy. And I really think that we have to start having conversations about what that is. And something that kept popping up for me, I'll say this and then I'll sit down. I think something that I've been really sitting with as we were talking about belonging that has been kind of playing in my mind as I was listening to Tyree speak is this notion of a lot of people want privilege. A lot of people don't want liberation. And so when we start talking about belonging, we start talking about inclusion, right? People truly have issues with the conversation piece around liberation because they know exactly what it means to give up that privilege, right? Liberation starts meaning, okay, I recognize that not enough Black people are getting what they need to get. I recognize queer people are not respected. I recognize disabled people are not respected here. So we need to do something. I'm going to do something about it here in this space that I'm in. But when you start talking about it, right, there are people who start to know that there are problems. And for them, it's, oh, well, the moment that I actually have to acknowledge it, that means that I lose my power here. And so I think that for me is the real conversation that I always kind of start with before we start jumping into belonging conversations is who's willing to go that extra mile to give up their power and their privilege? Because we all know we have it. Whether we want to acknowledge it or not, right? There are a lot of people who know that they have it and they are not doing anything with it. And so I think that's my thing about belonging. It's really about being able to say, I'm going to go ahead and take a step back because I know I have privilege in this moment. I'm going to go ahead and use my privilege to make sure that you feel seen or that you feel valued. And I'll just say it bluntly, not enough people are doing it. Not enough people want to give up. We were joking about it before we got on here. A lot of people love Black culture, but nobody wants to be Black. A lot of people love queer culture, but nobody wants to be queer because you understand what it means to struggle in those communities. So you like to be near us, but you don't want to be a part of us. And I think that's the bigger thing around belonging that I really wish people got. That privilege has a lot to do with that conversation because you understand and you know the struggles and you see the struggles, but for you, it's easy for you to touch them, to not actually have to be in them. So that's kind of where my thought is around this whole inclusion and belonging conversation.
Boom.
Ooh. Ooh.
Boom.
That was like my job. Let's just cut right here. We're done, y'all. Go have a good night. Learn that to get.
I had fun.
Good night, everybody. I had fun. I had fun.
Yes. So, oh my god. Ooh, that was just the ultimate mic drop, John. Thank you. So much. Okay, so folks who don't exist in fat bodies that want to be part of belonging, you have your marching orders. Now get to it. I want to now hone in with the folks maybe who are listening who do exist in fat bodies. The three of us are so truly we're privileged to be in a space where we don't have the same amounts of shame and and complicitness in the belief that our bodies are not enough. We are privileged to have done that work, and not everyone has. I don't want to say that everyone watching this has. So I want to talk about the word struggle a little bit. And I want to be really clear in saying I don't love the word struggle when it comes to body. I have chosen that word is no longer in my vernacular. It's not in my bingo card. It's nowhere near language for me. I don't say I struggle with my body. My body is fluctuating and I love it no matter what. But I also know that people do have feelings of struggle, that they struggle. So I want us to talk about the experiences that you may have struggled with or have navigated with your body yourself. That how did you move into a space of no longer struggling? And let me know if I need to rephrase that. Tariq, let's kick off with you.
So again, back to what I said earlier. It's taken years of shedding and years of really unpacking all of the harmful shit that's been programmed into my brain from the beginning, from being in elementary school, being the tallest kid in the class, being the kid who had the high voice, being the kid who was chunky. And I was made to believe that for a good deal of my life that there was something wrong with me. I was not normal. I did not fit in. I was othered, you know? And again, it wasn't until I really found my tribe that I was able to find that sense of belonging. And then in finding that sense of belonging, I was then able to unpack all of that shit and really step into and really figure out who the hell I am. Because once I started unpacking it, um, I started to really challenge a lot of ideas, a lot of limiting thoughts, in terms of self belief, in terms of how I saw myself, in terms of things that I thought I can do, things that I thought that I couldn't do, and I over the past, I would say 5 years, because honestly, doing the work of the Everyman Project has healed me a lot. And it's put me in a place where I started poking holes in those very limiting beliefs and really started challenging, like, yo, why can't you do this? Why can't you be comfortable with being in the front? Why aren't you comfortable with doing these photo shoots? And I started to push back at myself and started asking those really raw questions. And a lot of my trauma does stem back to childhood. And I had to then reinforce that, you know what, these things that happened to you, they were traumatic, but these are things that happened in the past. And there's a way that we can acknowledge this trauma, acknowledge that it's still here, and then grow from that. And not let that trauma be an anchor to keep me from really stepping into who the fuck I really am, essentially. And in doing that work, in doing all of that shedding, I feel a lot more free. I feel a lot more open. And in that, I can be more present when I'm connecting and engaging with other people, because I don't have that mask on that John mentioned earlier. And in that, I'm making way better connections with people. And in that too, lost a few friends too. But that's what happens when you shed, and your your way of thinking changes and others don't. And it doesn't mean that you love them any less, but sometimes you grow apart from people, and that's real, and that happens in life. But you have to do what you have to do to protect you and to protect your neck, and truly step into loving who you are. And that was the and like, again, I'm not a big fan of the word struggle, but again, I'm still a work in progress. I am definitely privileged where I have done a lot of the work, but I have my good days and I have my bad days. And and I'm really just doing the best I can with what I got, and I think that's all we can really do. But I am grateful that I do have a tribe that holds me accountable, a tribe that is encouraging. And I want that for everybody. And I think it takes that time of then doing that internal work and healing, and then being open to letting new people into your life, people that actually embrace you for who you truly are.
Thank you so much, Tariq. Oof.
Ooh.
Breathe that in really hard right here in my heart. John, how about you?
It's so funny because there were so, like, as Tariq has been speaking, there have been little dots that keep popping up, and I'm like, yes, 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 yes. So it's really, I think for me, I think this whole conversation is so affirming, because for so long you feel like you're in it by yourself, right? I too was the fat kid on the playground that didn't get picked for football or for kickball because, oh, they're gonna be too slow, and they play like a girl and all of that, right? So you hear all of that and it follows you in different iterations. And I think you talk about this notion of struggle. I think my biggest struggle has been not necessarily even just loving myself. I think it's to like myself. I think the world has really, in so many different ways, you're taught to really dislike who you are before you even really get a chance to know who you are, if that makes sense, right? You're constantly molded to what your family wants you to be. You're constantly molded by what your teachers want you to be. You're constantly like, you're getting all these messages, right? And I remember when I first started therapy, I remember my therapist asking me, who is John? And I just started crying because I was like, Girl, I don't know. Like, it was like one of those things of like my whole life, I've been everybody else's thing, right? I've been trying to show up the way that everyone else wanted me to. And so I think when you talk about the struggle, I think my biggest struggle, or the what I've had to relearn, is I no longer see it as, like you said, a struggle. I see it as a journey. I have literally been on this journey to getting to know myself and getting to like myself. And in that, I've been able to find things that I love about me. Because I'll even say this, like I said, I mean, I know I alluded to this earlier, you know, I've had two situations in my life where I thought, well, if I lost weight, the world would be so much better. And I lost the weight, and I would still go home after work crying. And it was like, girl, you're hungry and you're skinny and you're still sad. Now what? Right? Like, so, so like, right? It's like, so now, so looking at my Azalea Banks. So what now? Right? Like, that's literally what it was like, you're hungry and you're skinny. You're still single. You still, you still don't like you. So what else, right? You know, that meme of that man, your hairline's uneven and you look dusty. That's how I felt, right? And so I think about that a lot, like this notion of how we spend our whole lives reeling around. Like a lot of people, and I find this, and I've actually sat with it a lot. I will watch, I talk a lot. I always tell people, I know I talk a lot, but I also watch a lot. I'm very visible. And I think you all can say this, and you probably can agree. Being a queer Black person, being a big queer Black person, you have to stay visual. So you spend a lot of time observing and watching people and watching things, again, for safety, right? But the one thing I do know is that there are a lot of people who don't like themselves. And they genuinely don't. It's because they have no idea who they are. And so I'm in this phase of my life where I'm getting to know John on a different level. John likes to wear nails. John likes to shop at Eloquy. John likes to eat donuts. John likes to Peloton. John likes to write. Like I'm becoming okay with a lot of the stuff that I was very afraid to actualize, right? I'm a very sexual person. I'm a very funny person. Like, these are all the things that I'm starting to actualize around me. And I think that's the thing that comes with this notion of like struggle. Your struggles are often built with people putting roadblocks in front of you. When you can move those roadblocks and say, you know what, I'm gonna go ahead and go over here. I'm gonna do what I need to do over here. Then it doesn't become a struggle, because it's really easy for you to become clear about who you want to be. I think for me, I'll just say this, I know we are limited on time. I think the number one thing for me has been, I do not want to leave this earth hating myself. I won't do it. I have gotten to this place where I wake up every single day and I tell myself, I will not leave this earth hating me. I'm not gonna do it. And I just won't. I won't. And so what makes me feel good? A taco. What makes me feel good? Maybe it's a donut. What makes me feel good? Maybe it's zipping through Randy's. But if it makes me feel good and it makes me happy, I'm gonna do it. Because I'll say this. I think having so many family members in the last few weeks leave this earth has really hit me with how it's really put mortality in my face in a different way. And I think that we spend so much of our time being so focused on what other people think about us that we lose ourselves in the process of that. And so I think these days I'm more focused. So I'm not saying I'm self-absorbed and self-centered, but I'm definitely in tune with myself around that, if that makes sense.
Perfect sense. And thank you. Thank you for sharing that with us, and thank you for sharing the struggle, just in contextualizing how people around you lives are being lost and how that's making you think about your own life. Like, thank you so much for sharing that. I also was gonna say, I know it's gonna make you feel good too, and that's tomorrow when that PSL hits, baby. That's gonna make you feel good tomorrow as well.
Oh, baby, look, I have a long drive ahead of me tomorrow. I cannot wait to zip through that Starbucks. Know me, see me with the pumpkin chai.
Period.
I'm breathing in both what you just said, because I think for folks who are watching, listening, if you are like, I mean, obviously everyone has their own journey regardless, but like, I love the framing of like, it's a work in progress, that it is a journey, that like, and John, I appreciate you saying liking rather than loving, because loving myself is much different than liking myself. Like I love myself for who I am, and all the only things, but like when I'm at night in my bed with myself, like, do I like who I am, and do I like what I'm seeing, and all these things? I'm like not seeing in a visual sense, but like, what do I like what I'm seeing when I'm like, when I look at myself, I'm like, do I like as well as looking back at me as Christina Aguilera sings in Milan, who is this girl I see? And I appreciate that so much. And I appreciate the also the notion of actualizing who I am. And what a moment to recognize as well that like you're actualizing who you are, like as a person, while still being fat. And I say that because it is like the thing I want people to take away from that is like you can do all these things that make you a crippled person, like while being fat. Like being fat actually has nothing to do with like this, like who you are and who you are and how you love, or who you are and how you like create friendships, who you are and how you succeed and thrive. Like being fat is literally just being fat. I've given so much thought, particularly in the past year and a half of like my fatness. Like I think about like when if someone were to ask me, John doesn't know a lot of trouble skinny people facts. I'm like, listen, I know many more happy fat people than I do know happy skinny people. I see some people who are sad and they're skinny, and I'm like, and it's funny because my first thought is like, you literally have all the privilege that you can ask for. What makes you sad? And it just shows you that it really is about who they are and what they're seeing in the mirror in terms of like their soul that they aren't loving and liking. But I was gonna say one thing I think about a lot is like if someone were to ask me how do I navigate the struggle, like I told John this, like my body has survived COVID twice. My body has like hiked giant mountains. My body has like gone across the world and back. My body had my body has a dick. My body has like all these things. I should not say that on a live stream, but my body has like done all these amazing things while fat. So who am I? Who am I to look at this body and say you aren't worthy? You aren't worthy of being loved or respected. That you we know the truth. But like who am I to look at this body and say like you aren't enough for something when you have done everything in our bodies? I mean the point that John made earlier, like John's on Peloton literally like 4 sessions in, or like 4 back-to-back bike things, and I'm like, girl, like I mean I know it's fun, but damn, give the bike a break. The bike is like, bitch, stop petting me so damn much. It's just so what a moment, what a moment in testimony to ourselves that for folks who are thinking about bodies and how do I love myself more, like you just live through it, and in the words of our great Tisha Campbell, I'm I'm still here. Like you're still here with that body, baby. So really push that to everybody. I know we are short on time. I want to ask one last question, be a really fun one for us because we talked about fashion earlier. I told Tariq I'm gonna hold it. And Tariq, I want to kick off with you. How has fashion got you into your spaces of self-love? Because fashion to me is often liberation, especially
It
now when
is.
clothes were not made for us 10 years ago, but we are damn near making ways to make clothes fit us in some capacities. However, but whether it's the crop top, maybe whether it's the crop top, baby,
Hey,
whether it's the jeans, like
yes.
tell me how fashion has got you into a space of liberation.
Man, oh my
Yeah, and I
God.
see John with the little tie right
So
here. Yes.
fashion is everything because you get to create yourself. You know what I mean? You get to create your own world. You get to create the world that you live in visually through aesthetics, through colors. And these things are all extensions of my identity. And I'm such a mood oriented person where it comes to how I dress, and like I fully dress the way I want to, and you know, I grew up with a father who was a basketball coach, and like he would get me like a lot of athletic wear, track suits, throwback jerseys, and I'm still a Brooklyn kid, so like I enjoy some of those things still. But now it's with a twist. We might do the track suit with some nails. You know what I mean? Or it's like it might be a track suit we can have the thigh out a little bit. So it's like now I'm because I still love those things that I grew up wearing. It's now I can do it at less from a space of being the image of what my father wanted it to be, but it's still taking those things that I do enjoy about streetwear and making it me, and making and really stepping to my own identity, and like doing the nails, doing the interesting hair colors, wearing those sheer tops, wearing the lace, mixing it with other things, and like through fashion, you can really feel that freedom, and it's boundless. Like it's whatever's in your mind, you could create, and I think now we're in a space where there are more options for plus bodies, but there still is a lot more work to do, because sizing is not as inclusive as these brands say that they are. I'm so sorry, but 3X, going up to 3X, that's not inclusive. Going up to 4X, that's not inclusive. Stopping at 5X, that's more inclusive than most, but that's not inclusive. We need to go up to 6, 7X at least.
18X.
Oh, stop. We gotta stop playing. We need to go all the way up, because everybody wants to look good. And the thing about these fashion brands, it's all about exclusivity and gatekeeping. That's why they don't want us in their clothes. That's the real fucked up part about it, because they can easily make the change. Like that's a whole, we might need to come back on the podcast for that, because I got some bombs to drop. But
I got you for season 2. I got you for season 2.
Yes. Okay. We get into some things. But I'm gonna stop because I know time is short. And yes.
Thank you, Tariq. John, just real quick, and then we will close out.
I like to say I love to see the big girls killing it. I think Dexter Mayfield is a great example. Tariq, the way that your company and your org has posited bigger bodies in fashion. I think of I think is it Ade, who is the
Addie,
influencer.
yeah.
Addie,
Addie,
who was the influencer,
Addie's
who was a big girl.
everything.
Yeah. So I think fashion definitely makes you feel good. I think when you can find things that you look good in, i.e., I know I look good in this top, no matter when and where I wear it. I appreciate that, but I also am with you, Tariq. Like I want brands to stop playing in our face. Period. Just stop playing in fat people's faces.
Thank y'all so much. Oh, y'all like really just, I consistently every time I speak with y'all, I'm like, not just like, you really put the good in good duties, both of you really. So thank you so much for being here alongside with me today. I love you both so much. I'd love to ask y'all, for folks who are listening, I know you probably have more questions, more thoughts. I'm gonna go and ask our panelists to share where you can find them at, so you can hit them up for some more cool thoughts. But also don't be surprised when you hit with that invoice, because don't ask for labor and not paying for it. Just like this right now. But Tariq, where can folks find you at?
Well, you can find me at Tariq Carroll on Instagram, at TARIKCARROLL at Instagram. I am currently running a photo special specifically for plus models. Okay, it's an all-inclusive package. Go on my Instagram where you can find it. I'm only running it for the month, then it's done. But that's where you can find me there. You can also find me at theeverymanproject.com. You can find me at the Everyman Project on Instagram as well.
Perfect. Thank you. Let them know.
I had to plug a little bit. Just a little.
No, plug. Y'all heard the special here first. Y'all go and get it. John, let them know.
Well, when I'm not perusing the new flavors at Crumble Cookies, I am, you can find me on social media at Dr. John Paul. The handle is DOCTORJONPAUL. You have to spell out doctor. And then you can also take a gander on my new refreshed website, www.drjohnpaul.com. So yeah, if you want a link, I do consulting, anything and everything in relation to diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. I like to call myself Jedi because I'm really big on justice now. What does justice look like in organizations? I've been focusing on that. I also do a lot of stuff in entertainment and things of that nature too. All of it's on my website. You can find me there. Yeah, more to come.
Thank you so much. May the force be with you, bitch. Y'all
Thank
can find
you.
y'all can find me at Joho Daniels across all social media or JordanDaniels.com. And you can find John and I together on our podcast, the BFF Black Fat Femme podcast, on iHeart Radio, wherever you get your podcast. Hey.
Every Tuesday, yes, wherever you get your podcast, every Tuesday. Every Tuesday.
And make sure y'all catch the episode I was just on because it's good.
It's
It's
good.
Episode 5.
Good.
Were you 5 or 6? I
Five.
think you were
Yes.
episode 5. Yeah.
Yes.
Episode 5.
Okay.
Get
Tyree,
into it.
we pass it now to you, my queen.
Oh my God. Like, I have no words. We've been chit-chatting in the chat together, y'all. I know that you're feeling this energy that I'm feeling right now, even just listening to this conversation. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you, Jordan. Thank you, Tariq. Thank you, John. Thank you, Michael TEOLI for the music, and thank you, Judith Bourne, for PR. And thanks to all the Skylight Theater staff that helped make this possible. But thank you for tuning in and watching, whether it's today, whether it's 2 weeks from now, if you're watching it on YouTube. And I'll leave you with this. If you haven't already, start the journey to liking yourself, if not loving yourself. All right, y'all. Get some water, get some rest. We love you.
Mr. Lincoln, what do you want the people to know about you?
You are fabulous. Put on a silk scarf, a New Mexico hat, and a $500 apple, and you're a star.
Well, have you noticed? Stop talking about how short you are. In this office, I feel 6 feet tall.
You are just as invisible and irrelevant as me, and now the whole world knows it. Well, that's that.